Good morning. I love speaking in the morning because people are usually bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, have their caffeine going, little buzz going. I'm so happy to be here. The first time actually that I spoke at this conference was last year, and I met just tremendous people. Plus, I live in Newport, so the commute was pretty good. So before we start, I'm going to tell you my top 4 or 5 restaurants in Providence. Great place to have a conference, right? So, Al Forno. Now, y'all are on your business expense budgets, right? Al Forno, Sienna is on Federal Hill, Pani Vino is on Federal Hill, Pizzico, if you have a car, Pizzico is up on Hope Street, really good. So those are there's lots of great restaurants in Providence, but you gotta eat here, okay? It's really important. And a really good bar scene is Al Forno, but all the way around the Biltmore, is it still called the Biltmore? In Rhode Island, we call things from what they used to be. If you go around the corner in the Biltmore, there's a whole row of great places. Gracie's, I could go on and on, but you really want to talk about information governance, which is the most exciting thing to talk about on a Tuesday morning, right? So I'm at Robinson & Cole, and how does this thing work? Here we go, the big green thing. I head up the privacy and data security team at Robinson & Cole, and I'm a bit of a dinosaur in this area. I started in 1998, which think about the internet back then. Think about the Internet of Things, kind of not around. Following IBM a lot, did you see 60 Minutes on Sunday talking about Watson? It's very cool, but I'm watching that closely. They're doing great things. With respect to privacy and security. You don't think about that, but privacy and security has to do with a lot of things. So I head up our privacy and security team. I started off in the healthcare space, and so funny, 1998, we were thinking about if we can we transfer health information across state lines? Think about that. We were really looking at all the different laws in all the different states to see if we could literally transfer data across state lines. Well, we figured out that we could, and here we are years and years later, and obviously this whole area has grown. So what I want to talk to you about today is kind of the intersection between information governance and data privacy and security. And what Nick said was data privacy and security is part of information governance. And I would argue that information governance is a vital part of data privacy and security, because you all are responsible for the information. You know where the information is, and there are real problems for me when that information gets lost or stolen. So I'm going to talk about the relationship between information governance and data privacy and security. I like to think of it as a holistic approach. I like to think of organizations on an enterprise-wide basis, which I'll talk about in a second. Information governance is a crucial part of data privacy and security and the plan for the organization. And the information governance professional must be part of the privacy and security team of an organization. I'll talk about that in a bit. And of course, even though it's still in the morning and you have your caffeine buzz, the best way to keep people awake is to talk about real stories, which I'll talk about. And recognizing high-risk data, how to implement your privacy and security plan and what your role is in that, protecting the information, both digital and paper. A lot of organizations forget about the paper, and we're seeing lots of problems with paper records. Retention, destruction, vendor management, state data breach laws, and then a practical to-do list. I like to be practical in these things because I want you to go back and go, hey, we need to have this. I think this was a good idea. Take some things that I say, leave them, but I want you to be able to go back and use some things some nuggets that you're hearing today. So my understanding from the audience is that many of you are information governance specialists, professionals. You are the ones who are responsible for the data, the information, the paper, the digital records in your organization. I can't tell you how important that role is from a risk management perspective in an organization. Obviously, having an information governance program on an enterprise-wide basis is extremely important for risk management. We'll talk about that high-risk data, but if you don't protect that high-risk data, you all, unfortunately, have that responsibility. If you don't protect it, then you've got to get people like me involved when paper records fall off the back of a truck and they happen to have social security numbers on them, or data backup tapes are found in someone's home because they took them home to protect them, but then they forgot to move them when they moved to their new apartment. These are real stories. And if you don't know where your data is and it's lost or stolen, you could have a real problem on your hand when it comes to reportable data breaches. So it's really important that you nail down that high-risk data, which we'll talk about, but it's extremely important for your organization to understand how vital you are in that process and in reducing the risk. So all the things we do with and the information should be focused on increasing privacy and security. That's with my privacy and security hat. It's also from a risk management point of view, you all need to be front and center in the entire holistic approach that an organization is taking to protect their data, okay? So I say this, think of a house where each stakeholder in your organization has its own floor. Everyone has their own floor, but the elevator goes between them. You're that elevator, really, because you're between the IT guys and the file room and the IT guys, the legal people, the risk management people. I mean, you're the one in that elevator that's trying to put them all together. In my view, you are the one that's looking at all of it. Legal, we're looking at it too. Risk is looking at it, but you're really the one that has your hand on the pulse of where that data is. So we have this foundation. I look at you more as the elevator keeping them all together. Any one of those, if they don't have the most recent tools to keep out those hackers, primarily the Chinese and the Russian right now are just eating our lunch when it comes to hacking. Not only the DNC stuff, but you know, the Chinese government was responsible for 10 of the largest 15 data breaches last year. The Chinese government was responsible for Anthem. 80 million Americans' names, addresses, dates of birth, and social security numbers. The Chinese government was responsible for the Office of Personnel Management. All of our federal employees' names, addresses, dates of birth, social security numbers, and fingerprints. And then the Chinese government was responsible for hacking into United Airlines. Why do you think the Chinese government wants to know what's going on at United Airlines? Oh, well, where's their hub? Oh, near Langley. Oh, now they know where all of our spies are going. The Chinese government is eating our lunch. So if the, sorry, I get kind of passionate about this. So if your IT guy isn't protecting your digital records, the Chinese government can get it, right? If you're not protecting your high-risk data, both digital and paper, then vendors can lose it and you have a data breach. One of your employees could take home some highly sensitive data, put it in their car, and their car gets stolen. That happens. It's shocking to me how often paper records are left in cars, in briefcases, in trunks, and the car is stolen. Well, I just stopped to get a loaf of bread. They come out and all the records are gone. If you don't know that those employees are taking those records, that's a problem. If risk management doesn't have a handle on where everything is, that's a problem. Legal usually comes in saying, what the heck, didn't anyone have a handle on this? Now we have a data breach. So you guys are really important in all of this, and I want you to feel empowered by that and to go back to your organization and say, hey, I'm really important for risk management. I'm really important for the data privacy and security plan. Not only am I scanning records and making sure that they get off-site to a secure location. I need to be part of knowing where all of our high-risk data is. So let's talk about how to do that. My understanding, and I speak a lot, right? And I go into organizations a lot, and I talk to the CEO and the board, and I talk about how you need to engage your IT folks, you need to engage your information governance folks, your records management folks, your risk management folks. You need to get all of these people together so everybody is working together under the same set of rules, under the same set of priorities, so that you can all work together to protect the risk, okay? So in order to do that, and I know a lot of you are going to be like, well, Lynn, I just can't go to the CEO and go, dude, I need to be on your risk management, plan. I think that everyone is different. Whether you can go straight to your CEO or whether you can start talking to your IT or your compliance person or your legal, whoever you kind of have that relationship with, start forming that relationship, start building that relationship so that you can get your organization to start thinking about this in a holistic way. A lot of the larger organizations have been doing this for years. A lot of larger organizations aren't doing it. A lot of mid-sized, a lot of small organizations have it down pat. You're all in different organizations, you know where you are in this process, but feel empowered to go back and say, hey, I have a lot of responsibility. I think that we have a lot of risk here with what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. Forge those relationships with the people who make the decisions and be creative in how to help your organization take care of this on a global basis. So I would advocate that information governance is a crucial part of privacy and security in your organization. What I like to do in an organization is to have a privacy and security team. So I go in and when I help organizations try to figure out how to protect their data from a privacy and security standpoint, I like to map the data, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. So you got to find out where your high-risk data is so you can protect it. And then I like to do policies and procedures, not too many policies. Don't get policy crazy. I only like policies when you absolutely need them for legal compliance, because otherwise you have a policy, you're going to break it. Everybody breaks policies. I like procedures because I'm a litigator at heart and I still litigate cases. And if you've got a policy, I'm going to ask you in your deposition or when you're on the stand, did you follow that policy? And if you say no, guess what? 1 point for Lynn, 0 for you, right? But if you have just like a policy that you have to have, like in Massachusetts and Rhode Island and Connecticut, you have to have a written information security program. It has to be in writing. Under HIPAA, you have to have a breach notification compliance policy. It has to be in writing. These are policies you have to have. But you don't have to have all these other, I go into these organizations, they've got policies for everything. Someone is going to break that policy. Have the policy you need, but have procedures. Because you're doing your best effort to follow those procedures, right? Have the procedures. If you break a procedure from a legal point of view and from a cross-examination point of view, it's not as bad as violating a policy. So be careful with your policies, only required. Do procedures. Implement a privacy and security program. What does that mean? You need to be part of that for your organization. Your legal team needs to be part of it, your security officer, your privacy officer. Usually on the privacy and security team, I like to have communications, crisis management, because if you have a data loss, it's crisis mode. I mean, it is. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's crisis mode. You want to have all these folks together, including you, because you're the one that is doing the day-to-day protection of that data. And also employee training. I don't have to tell you this, but employee training is just huge in this area right now because it's the employees that are messing up. People do crazy things. So here's a good story. I'll start my stories now, even though the slide's not up. It's a great story. So I represented an entity in New York City, and guy, it was an information, it was a secure record storage company that I represented. And we had a driver, and basically they would take secure vans and they would go to different entities. They would take backup tapes in, boxes, put them in the van, go to the next one, and then go to the secure storage facility. Still happens every day, right? In this particular case, the driver had been working for the company for 6 years. Good guy, not a blemish on his record, was doing everything right. And he went to a very large hospital system in New York City and went in and got their backup tapes and brought them and put them in the van and drove off, went to his next stop in Harlem and went into the hospital in Harlem and came out, and the doors of the van were open and all of the boxes that he had picked up at his last stop were gone. So what do you do when that happens? Well, you got to figure out what the data was. Well, this data happened to be 1.7 million patient records, including their names, addresses, dates of birth, and social security number. 1.7 million. You can put a lot of stuff on backup tapes. Don't even get me started on USB drives. I hate USB drives. Do not allow anyone in your organization to use USB drives. If you are, let's talk offline. I hate USB drives. Okay. Just wanted to let you know that. So I get the call, Lynn, what are we going to do? Well, what do you have to do when there's 1.7 million social security numbers? Well, under HIPAA, you have to notify, and under every 47 state laws, you have to notify all the individuals. You have to notify the AGs, and you have to notify HHS, Office for Civil Rights. Not a pleasant entity to deal with. I know from experience, the OCR is not pleasant. So what happened? What happened was the employee made a mistake and he didn't lock the van between stops. He didn't do it on purpose. He had no malice. It was a mistake. People make mistakes all the time, which is why you need to be aware that everyone in your organization, you just have to assume they're going to make a mistake. They're going to take paper records, they're going to print them, they're going to take them in their car, they might have social security numbers on them, and if their car is stolen, you got a problem. Your data backup, you're sending it offline, you're sending it off-site with a very reputable data management company. I've had breaches with every single one of them. Every single one of them. They get lost. They get lost in their own warehouses, right? Be careful. We're going to talk about what you can do and tools you can do to take care of that. So here's what this is who I like on my privacy and security team in an organization, but you can mix and match that all you want. So how do we integrate information governance with privacy and security in an organization? The first thing you have to do, and you really need to take the bull by the horn here, you need to figure out where all your high-risk data is. If you do nothing else when you get back to your organization, I want you to start thinking about social security numbers in a different light. Because social security numbers are the #1 high-risk data there is out there. A full social security number. So when I go into organizations and I look to see where their social security numbers are, I want to know, are they paper? Are they electronic? If they're paper, what are you doing with them? Are they just in filing cabinets? Where are all your HR data? Most organizations know that their HR data has to be protected. But what you all need to understand is all those paper records that you're scanning into the system, if they have social security numbers on them and someone in your organization or a hacker from outside your organization gets into those records that you've just scanned into your system and have access to that data, it's a reportable data breach in 47 different states, usually in federal law as well if it's health information. So one time I had a case where this might not be completely pertinent, but this is what happens. I had an auditor from a Big 4 auditing firm download names, addresses, dates of birth, social security numbers into her laptop. People can be downloading data into your laptop. She took it home. Her apartment was burglarized. The laptop was stolen. Another thing, I get laptop stories every week, right? Monday morning, Lynn, what do we do? Well, was the laptop encrypted? Well, no, it wasn't encrypted. Well, if it had been encrypted, we wouldn't have had an issue. But you know, it was password protected. It doesn't matter. Password protection does not protect you under the law. But you know, Lynn, she couldn't remember her password, so she wrote it on a little yellow sticky note and put it on the inside of the laptop, right? So here I am. What am I going to do with this? Well, that was an international cruise line. Every single one of their employees' data was in that laptop. I had to notify all those individuals. They were not happy with their employer. And I had to notify 17 attorneys general because they lived in 17 different states. So guess how many attorneys general were breathing down my neck, right? You don't want the AGs breathing down your neck, even if you're a former assistant attorney general. I don't want that. So be really careful and understand that if you do nothing else, when you are doing your job and when your team is looking at the data that you have access to, that you're responsible for, both in paper and electronic records, if you do nothing else and you lock down those social security numbers, you will be reducing the risk of a reportable data breach 100-fold, okay? And what I find is a lot of times in litigation, a lot of times HR, or just I-9s, right? I-9s, think about everything on an I-9. You're just scanning those into the system, right? Because you want to get rid of the paper. If you're scanning that into the system and you're not working with IT to lock down those social security numbers, and other people in the organization have access to those social security numbers, that's a problem. People can steal them. People can become victims of identity theft. Employees steal this kind of information all the time because it's worth money. So social security numbers, if you can identify them, I know, you know, Jim Merrifield is on my privacy and security team at Robinson & Cole, and we literally had an entire project looking at paper and digital social security numbers to make sure that they weren't being scanned into our system so no one else could have access. So no one could have access to a plaintiff. If we have a plaintiff's social security number and we're scanning that litigation document into the system, then everyone has access to that. That's wrong. It's not good privacy and security practices. So we had an entire project just trying to identify social security numbers in our organization. You should do the same, because that will dramatically reduce your risk if you can make sure that those documents aren't scanned in, aren't accessible to anyone, and if they're sent off-site, if, God forbid, something goes wrong off-site, you know there's no social security number. So be really, really careful and make sure the people in your organization are really careful with socials. The other things, financial institution data, obviously, any documents or electronic information from your finance department, high risk, right? So if you have credit card numbers, debit card numbers, direct deposit, all of that data, I want you to put very high on your risk management continuum. If you lock these down, if you make sure that they're protected, you will be way better off than if you're just throwing them in the system or you're sending them off-site. Health insurance information, health information. A handful of states now say that any health information, whether it's covered under HIPAA or not, is considered a reportable data breach, including Rhode Island. So anytime you have any workers' compensation claims, anytime you have any HR claims, disability information, all of your HR information, high risk data that if it's lost or stolen or your vendor loses it, it's a reportable data breach. And then obviously employment information, you know about that. So this is how I suggest you implement a privacy and security plan in your organization. You have to conduct a security risk assessment. That's your IT folks. Go back to your IT folks and say, hey, have we done a security risk assessment? Because you need to be part of that security risk assessment. If the assessment comes back and says you have information, digital information that's accessible to everyone in the organization, and that's high risk, then you need to be part of the plan in lowering that risk for your organization. If you have all sorts of paper records that are in filing cabinets that aren't locked, and they include social security numbers, credit card, finance information, you need to be part of that so that you can reduce that risk and put proper measures in place to protect it. Prepare and implement privacy and security policies. Again, remember, don't get too many policies. I like procedures. Institute a breach notification procedure and plan. Most states require it. Some states require it. It's a good thing to do. It's not something that you're going to necessarily do, but you should be part of it, because a lot of times you'll be part of the forensic evaluation. A lot of times you'll be part of the investigation when information is lost or stolen. So a breach notification procedure and plan should be in place. I would also go so far as to say you need to test that. I do breach tabletops with organizations all the time, and I don't tell them what the scenarios are, and we get the privacy and security team into the room, and I start firing them with real life scenarios to see what they're going to do. Because when you're involved in a data loss or a hacking incident, or an insider takes the data and sells it, it's crisis mode. It's not just, oh, another day at the office. So make sure your organization is testing that data breach notification plan. Create an incident response team. Again, those companies who, and if you think that you're not going to have a data loss, hello, get your head out of the sand. You're going to have a data loss. You're going to have a hacking incident. I could talk to you about malware and ransomware, but I won't, because that's the IT guys, but it's pretty scary out there with malware and ransomware. So understand that you're part of a team that's looking to reduce the risk for all information in your organization. Prepare and implement a written information security program. That includes you. It's not just the IT guy. So remember, we're trying to get everybody on that team to be thinking and talking and cooperating on a global, holistic way. So don't go, oh, that's the IT guy. The IT guy will do that. Well, if the IT guy doesn't do that, guess who the next person is they're going to be calling? You're ultimately responsible in your organization. Make sure that you're working together with the IT guy, because the two of you and the privacy person is really important, and legal and compliance, whatever your organization has for that team, all right? Train employees and audit the information technology system. So again, the first stage in all of this is if your organization has not mapped that high-risk data, go back and map it. Go back and figure out where it is so that you can implement appropriate procedures to be able to protect that data. Make sure that you're looking at paper and electronic data. Right now, paper records continue to be a huge problem for data breaches. It's shocking to me how many times paper records fall off the back of trucks. What are they doing with these paper records? Paper records were found in a local dump by the Boston Globe. Health records found in the local dump. The guy was taking his stuff to the dump, and he sees like all these paper records, and he picks one up, and oh, it's someone's health information, name, address, date of birth, social security number, at the dump. And the Boston Globe, well, guess what the Boston Globe did? Guess what they did? Yeah, a big expose, right? The guy had a scoop because he went to the dump. Be careful with your paper records. The other thing that I'm finding in organizations with paper records are, you know, we love those blue bins. We love being environmental, right? We like to make sure that we put all of our paper in the blue bins. I hate those blue bins. I am very environmentally supportive. But what happens is people don't discriminate between what they put in the blue bin and what they put in the shredder. I am a shred girl, all the way. I am Enron in a legal way, all right? Get those folks in your organization shredding. because you just have no idea how much information or what type of information could be going in those blue bins. I'm working on a case right now where it was an organization had cleaning people that came in, and the company, they were in a large building, and the cleaning people who normally came knew that the information, the documents in the blue bin were really the shred bin, and the documents that were in the garbage were the garbage. But the new cleaning people didn't know that, and they were only there for 2 days, and they took all of the information in the blue bins and put it in the garbage. Well, what did we have to do? We had to then track the garbage to make sure that it wasn't on the back of a truck and wasn't gonna like fly down the road. We literally had to track the garbage. Where did the garbage go from the cleaning people? Where did it go to the transfer station? Did anyone see anything unusual? No. We have affidavits all the way to the incinerator, okay? Why? Because you have to document it, because if an AG or the federal government says, well, how do you know it wasn't? We can say, well, this is what we did, and we used reasonable steps to make sure it was protected. So don't forget about the paper records, and be careful with those blue bins. Shred, shred, shred. So I go and I train employees all the time in organizations about privacy and security, and people always complain, well, there's not enough shred bins. And then other people in the organization say, well, you're supposed to be walking for wellness. And it's like, so what do we do? And so my point is, go with more shred bins. Put them all around and tell people to walk to the farthest one for their wellness. But make sure that you've got enough shred bins in your organization that people are using them and understand how important shredding is in a legal way with your plan. All right, retention, destruction. I went to a security conference, and one of the speakers said, you know, it's really interesting to me how organizations have this thing, and lawyers, we do this all the time, right? Why do we want to keep paper forever? Why do we want to keep documents and records forever? You really only have to keep them for a legal purpose for so long. And she said, it's like a chair. When the chair no longer is useful and one of the legs is off, do you send it to storage? Well, no, you don't send that chair to storage. You send it out with the garbage, right? So why do organizations keep these paper records longer than they should? We shouldn't be. It's no different than a chair. It's because probably your law department is worried that there might be something that can save them. Trust me, in the 28 years that I've been a lawyer, paper and information has only come back to bite me. I've never found a piece of paper that's helped me in the long run. So try to get your organization comfortable with the fact that stop saving everything. Stop sending it to Iron Mountain. Stop scanning it in. You don't need it unless there's a legal hold or unless you're under a legal hold. Really get people, and data retention is a very hard thing to do. Data destruction is an easy thing to do. Retention's really hard because every state law has different laws around how long you have to keep it. But no state law says forever, except for if you're in the medical industry. Sometimes they make you keep medical information forever. But get together with your legal folks. Get together with your business folks. Make sure they understand that keeping data longer than you need it is a risk. It's also expensive, but it's a risk because it can come back and bite you if you're ever in litigation. So make sure that you're not over saving your records and really engage your legal folks, because I'll admit it's probably legal, right? How many people, come on, let's have some audience interaction. How many people's legal departments want to keep records longer than you want to? Yeah, come on, the rest of you are lying. All right, engage your legal folks. Engage them so that they understand that there's a reason why state laws only require you to retain information for so long, and that it's no different than a chair or a desk that has outlived its useful life. So work closely with your legal department. Vendor management. We're seeing a lot of problems with data breaches with vendors, okay? And this, you all know about Target, right? You all know that the Target breach was as a result of a vendor who had access to the environmental data of Target. Target then unfortunately put their customer data in with their environmental data on their stores, and the hackers were able to get into all of their customer information. So where does this apply to you all? I will tell you that what I'm finding in the industry is that people don't vet their vendors enough. So they're sending their paper off-site, or they're sending their backup tapes off-site, or they're using a cloud vendor for their data. And the companies are not vetting their vendors, because vendors in general don't have as good of security as you do. You want to make sure that you're checking them out to make sure that they have appropriate measures in place that's going to protect your data. Because frankly, under most state laws, whether the vendor has a loss or a hacking of your data or you do, guess what? It's still your problem, because it's your customers. Think about sending out that letter saying, oh, and hey, by the way, although it was our vendor, they allowed a hacker into all of the information that we're storing with them on the cloud, and they got access to all of your data. You know, your customers aren't very happy about that. There's lots of statistics out there that show that customers are leaving companies after a data breach. They're leaving companies because they don't trust you anymore. So what do? This is what I do. When it comes to figuring out where your data is going, both paper and electronic, you need to follow your data. If you do nothing else, just follow it. Who has access to my data? Who am I sending my data to? Make sure legal is involved so that they can have appropriate contractual measures in place. Don't ever sign a contract that a vendor hands to you, because guess what? It's not very good for you. It's way better for them. So make sure that you have indemnification, that they have insurance. Make sure that your legal department is involved and is on top of these contracts. The highest risk vendors are there, right? I would say off-site storage as well. Make sure that you have contracts in place. Make sure a lot of companies now are doing privacy and security questionnaires to their high-risk vendors to make sure that they have privacy and security measures in place. Find out where they are. And then the other trick of the trade is, if they won't sign your agreement that is good for you, well, put it in with finance. So guess what? They're not on your vendor list, or they don't get paid until they actually sign the agreement that says that they're going to protect your data, okay? So get together with finance and make sure you're not just willy-nilly sending these out, and make sure that they're not paid until they actually sign. I told you there's 47 different state breach notification laws. Any loss of data of that high-risk nature that we talked about earlier, whether it's paper or electronic, you got 47 different state breach notification laws. So when I have a data breach and it involves 30 states, I have to send the letter out so that it's compliant with all 30 states, and then I have to notify the Attorney General. Again, icky. It's just not a fun place to be, all right? So here's your to-do list. Here's your to-do list to go. I think I'm almost out of time, but here's your to-do list. Again, I wanted this to be practical. Be a part of that team. Make sure your organization gets a team. Map your high-risk data. Everyone's taking pictures, not of me, of the slide. Right? I think these will be available to you, but feel free to take a picture. Map your high-risk data. You need to know where it is. Don't just throw stuff in boxes, send it offshore, and don't let your data go outside the United States. Here's my best outside the United States story. So we had there was a very well-known health insurance company in Georgia, and they had all of their data in a cloud that was, the servers were in India, and one day they got an email that said, if you don't pay us $10 million, we're going to put up all of your information on the internet. And they're like, well, I'm going to call the feds. The feds will help me. And the feds are like, it's India. Like, we'll try to help you, but we don't have any jurisdiction over companies in India. Make sure that when you're using cloud solutions, that your data and that you have contractual measures in place that your data stays in the United States. Because if a company in the United States tries to blackmail you or does something with your data, you can actually ask the federal government to help you. If it's in the Philippines or India, good luck with that. So anyways, I get off on tangents. Map your high-risk data, know where it is. Get social security numbers off of it if you're sending stuff off-site or you're scanning it into your systems. Social security numbers, I want antenna flying up every time you see one, all right? You gotta know that you have them before you can protect them. Evaluate the current state of your information management and governance policies, procedures, and practices. Identify and analyze the scope of your organization's data, including high-risk data. Design your strategy to protect it, to be compliant, and to reduce the risk. Build a business case. I'm telling you, you all have a really good business case to go to your CEO and your executives about how important you are for risk management in your organization. Explain how it aligns with the organization's mission. You'll see all those statistics out there now that CEOs and boards are very concerned about data risk. You are a key to protecting that risk. You've got a lot of leverage. Go use it in your organization. And share the plan with the organization's entire privacy and security team. I think that's it. Yep. So y'all, thank you so much. I know we're going to have we don't have questions now, but I'll be around if you have questions, or if you have questions about where to eat in Providence. I'm a big foodie, so let me know. Thanks.